Hey y'all, welcome back to The Inner. Today I'm joined by my brother, Lloyd Michael Douglas L. of Moors in America. Hey, how you doing today?
Doing great. Great. It's an honor to be here, brother.
It's an honor to have you. If you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, sure. So brother Lloyd Douglas L. I'm actually Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America, number 30, Temple number 30, Columbus, Ohio. We have a website. If anyone wants to learn anything about that, you can go to www.moorishamericans.com. Just to, go get information about us. We have classes and meetings all the time every week. Get all that information there, and yeah. So outside of that, yeah. So I am a local spiritual leader there with the temple, and the temple, the Moorish Science Temple of America, is actually the oldest Islamic institution in the United States of America. But it's like obscure; people don't know about it. It's been around for over 100 years now, and yeah, started by a brother named Prophet Noble Drew Ali from North Carolina. So just going back into me, yeah, I'm a Grand Sheik there. I also do marketing for a living, marketing and distribution of a all natural skincare product called Egyptian Magic Skin Cream. All natural, only has 5 ingredients. Something you may want to check out. You can actually find it in stores wherever you're at. And yeah, I do marketing um, and distribution for that. Also do marketing for people. If you have a website or business you want to get up and running, you can check out my website, sharifali.com. Just send me a line. Help you scale your business, take it to the next level. But yeah, that's what I do. I also wrote a book called Unlocking the Keys, which is aimed at assisting, uplifting fallen humanity. So it's really aimed at helping you to unlock the power within. Because from my perspective, I would say what I know, but other people would say what I believe. I believe that we all have unlimited capacity, unlimited capabilities within us. We have so much potential within us that for most of us, we couldn't even believe what we're capable of actually doing. So I think that humanity in general is only on the cusp, of what we could actually be accomplishing or doing, you know, as far as, our connection to each other, the universe, and just the things, the capabilities that we're doing. There's no reason for people to be hurting, homeless, going through hardships and things like that. We can take care of all that and with an eye. So, yeah, just I believe, doing my part to assist in uplifting us so that we can realize that potential and doing the work here personally for myself as well. You can see a lot of the books behind me, do a lot of reading, also a lot of writing, and just trying to share what I've learned through life experiences over time. Um, share that with the people.
That's nice. So let's talk about your journey a little bit. How did you get into the Moorish science? What was that
Okay.
journey like for you?
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting journey. I originally from Toledo, Ohio. Personally, grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, though, and growing up in Memphis was just like the mentality. And I'm 45, so the mentality growing up in the 80s, 90s, in Memphis, Tennessee, was really very carnal minded, lower self thoughts and activities. Um, but always had an inkling like that there was something more to life, right? And so I looked at, as far as information, I looked at all types of different schools of thought. I didn't feel like I was getting enough spiritual fulfillment from the church, so I looked outside, looking at everything, right? Just as far as researching history, spirituality, and one day when I was in Memphis driving around, maybe running errands, I don't even remember. This was like 20 years ago, brother. I was in my early 20s, probably like 21 or something like that. I saw a store that I later found out was called Seven Seal Publications, and they had some symbols like on the banner for the store, and I didn't know what they meant, but it looked really interesting. It was just speaking to something inside me. So I was like, thinking, my thought process was, let me stop, pull up in this little shopping center, and go inside there and ask them some questions, which is, kind of crazy because I didn't know what was going on in there. I didn't even know what I was going to expect when I walked in. But when I did walk in, do this establishment. And I believe there were two brothers in there. One of them, I wound up getting to know him later on. His name's Elihu Pleasant Bay. Now that's somebody that, for everybody who's watching, you can actually go and look him up. He has a very interesting story and history. But the brother Elihu Pleasant Bay, he actually wrote a book, which at that point in time he was just releasing. I saw like stacks of books everywhere. He was releasing this book called "The Exhuming of a Nation," and this book, which I can show you guys, you have a copy here. Library. Pardon me for turning my back on the people, but just want to pull that out. Okay, so here we go. It's a big book. This is a copy of it. So it's called "The Exhuming of a Nation," right? And just to give you an idea, some of these symbols were like on that store, at Seven Seals publication store. So seeing that, he had just released his book at that time, so maybe it was like 2003, 2002, something like that. Anyway, I talked to him, and very enlightened brother, as far as spiritually, and very well read, historically astute. And he was letting me know some things that I had not heard before, just about our people. When I say our people, I'm talking about people classified as African American, Black, nowadays in America. And he was just saying that that we don't realize that we're actually a nation of people, and that's what this book is about: exhuming a nation, because we're asleep, we're dead, we don't realize who we are. And so he was giving me, as much information as you can in a short interaction in a store about this, but just really started sparking me in that direction to look further. And this is my introduction to the Moors. Like for me, it was more than 20 years ago, like 23, 24 years ago. Speaking to the author of this book, I didn't join his organization. I want to find out later on that he has his own organization, but I did start to look up things like the person on that book cover pulling his back. That's Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Looking up Moorish Americans, and just it was just a part of my journey, spiritually. One of the many schools of thoughts that I was looking into. I mean, brother, I was looking into everything. Even what people would call voodoo. Like the Orishas, the seven African
Powers.
pantheon of gods, if you want to say, like, yeah. So I was looking into everything, just the nations of gods and earths, the seven 5%ers, Nation of Islam, all of that. Didn't join anything, but just looking through all of the different philosophies, and those are part of my spiritual journey. Also looking into you know um, who we really are, because the deeper that I look, again, and realize that, hey, we're more than just the body, we're more than just the flesh and blood, more than what we see here. And that helped me begin to go back and understand the scriptures now that I was reading, right? Because I'm looking at it from a more well-rounded, more seasoned perspective, I would say. But yeah, so that journey for me into where I'm at now, um, again, a while ago, and even then, I'd say back 20 years ago, just a lot of the research that I did, regardless of what I was looking at, when it was coming to our people, like the so-called African Americans, and even the people in the Caribbean, Central South America, I kept coming back to this connect to us as being Moors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's something that I've identified as personally for myself for 2 decades, you know.
Nice.
Um, and that's just like in a nutshell.
Yeah. So talk about that for a moment. To be a Moor, of course, I've done research. I did an article on Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but for a fair amount of us, knowing what a Moor is, who the Moors were, is completely foreign. If you could give a brief introduction or a summary on what is a Moor, who is Prophet Noble Drew Ali, what's the importance of this? Why does this matter for us?
Yeah, sure. So that's great. Even that you've done some research yourself on Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Most people have never even heard of this man and wouldn't even know that this man, like, you may have heard of Marcus Garvey, who was
Hmm.
actually like a protege of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but nobody's heard of him, even though he had a huge impact back then in the 1920s. But just to speak about the Moors and the connection to us, and from my perspective, so just speaking, like I guess you could kind of say the mainstream view of Moors, even though Moors aren't like really like well known. Like some people that know history, okay, I've heard of Moors, I've seen about it, but in general, generally speaking, when you're talking about the Moors, you have people who are um, even though you'll get some pushback from this from some people, people who are African of African descent, who were well educated, civilized, for the most part, practice Islam. Some practice Judaism, um, and they were centered in North Africa for the most part. But at different points in time, the kingdom or their empire, their dominions actually moved around. So from the year 711 to the year 1490 or 1491, Europe was being ruled by Moors. When I say Moors, I mean people that look like you and me. And the rulership was centered in Spain. Back then, it wasn't called Spain. Spain was España, right? Spain, España was a rather new name. This is a name that's less than I'd say like maybe like 500, 600 years old, maybe more, give or take a few years, but it's not that old. So before it was called Spain, it was called Al Andalus, and it was ruled by people that look like us. People went there, conquered it, started bringing civilization to Europe. So Europe, before that point in time, was not civilized. And the further away from the Iberian Peninsula that you went, like say the further north you went, the less civilized it was, and that's where you had outbreaks like the Black Plague and things like this that would like impact other parts of Europe. But Spain, España, Al Andalus would be flourishing, right? The people were good. They weren't like having these huge outbreaks that were killing millions of people. That was like devastating for the rest of Europe. And so when the Moors ruled, yeah, they built uh, universities. They brought the first universities to Europe. Like so, they pretty much civilized Europe. It didn't just impact Spain. It also went out to other parts, to England and to the United Kingdom. All of that. It went out to other parts of Europe, even all the way out to Russia, right? And so the Moors had this huge impact. Matter of fact, the things that they did teach us about, coming from an American perspective, we all had to learn about the Italian Renaissance. We all had to learn about certain things, no matter where you went to school at in America. But all of those things happened during Moorish rule. They happened between 711 and 1491, right? And this is because the Moors had that big of an impact on Europe. First off, there were no hospitals, there were no schools, no universities, there was no higher learning, there was no arts, science. So the Moors did all of this. You didn't even really have kings and queens until the Moors came and started to establish, the higher civilization and things that allowed people to begin to like, okay, now we're going to focus on, I'm going to create music. I'm going to write music. Now you have all of these things flourishing. And so, the Moors, they were doing, science, practicing medicine, all of that. And so the Moorish rule was huge. But when the Moorish Empire, Al Andalus fell, 1491, the last Moorish king, his name was Boabdil, when he succeeded the last stronghold of Granada, which was in Spain, Al Andalus, when he ceded that over to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, he also gave over the keys to the kingdom. So 1492, the very next year, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? And they were being told that you can't make that journey. The oceans, you'll die. You won't make it, right? You can't cross that ocean. This is what the Europeans were being told the whole entire time the Moors were ruling, right? But when that kingdom fell, so did many of the maps and things that showed that there are greater portions of the world available. And so, yeah, the very next year, Europe started coming to America. America was actually a part of the Moorish dominions. You had trade and stuff like that taking place. You have actually a story from North Africa of King Abu Bakari making a Atlantic cross Atlantic journey and taking so many ships. I forget the amount of ships, and pardon me for not knowing this ahead of time. I forget the amount of ships, but he had so many ships, and they were so large that he was taking creatures like elephants and stuff like that with him, right? So this was like a one, like for many, most of them it was a one-way journey. They're coming over here with all of these goods, all of these animals, and all of these people coming into the Americas. There's when they got to the midway point, they spoke about hitting the ocean currents that would take them to the landmass they were going to, and they sent a small contingent back to Mali to give the word that hey, they're successful, they made the journey, right? And also that Mansa Musa would be the next king, right? And so this was a one way journey. They came over here, right? And this was like maybe like 1200s, late 1200s, right? So they already knew about it, trade and stuff like that was taking place, and they were coming and meeting a lot of people over here. Some of the people, or many of the people, look like us who are already over here, right? Even though that's not taught to us in history. And so this is for me, like with learning about my Moorish history. This is what it began to make sense out of things like this. Like this is a great book for people to read, just for history, regardless of what your ethnicity is, right? Because some people think I'm Afrocentric or something like that. It's like, nah, that's a great book from Evan Van Sertima. He's a professor at Rutgers University. They came before Columbus. When you're reading about this and all of these artifacts, and they found like written records and script from the Mande people, Mande in Northwest Africa, over here in the Americas prior to European conquest. So when you begin to learn about the history and really go in and study and look and see what people from all backgrounds, even the European explorers, were saying when they were coming into the Americas, now it begins to make sense. Oh, okay. So the Moors, this was part of the Moorish Empire and dominions, and it begins now. You can begin to put the piece together. Get a more well-rounded view of history. Another book I would recommend to people too to check out. This is from Professor Jose Pimenta Bay. That's Othello's Children in the New World. Great book, masterful work, and very well documented. And just would suggest everybody check that one out. But just saying that like when you learn about the Moors and you come at it with a open mind, you have to come at it with an open mind because first off it turns up everything upside down. Like we're taught that the Europeans civilized everyone, and everybody was like in worse off conditions. Then you come and find out that hey, these dark skinned people came and they civilized the Europeans, and they were trying to, even when they were suffering from things like the Black Plague, they didn't know about um rats potentially having fleas and things that are carrying diseases on them, and that being the cause of they were very superstitious. They didn't understand the science. So the Moors had to teach them this and teach them to bathe. They had to make like bathing like almost law so that we can, and stop putting your excrement out in the streets and stuff like that. That's unsanitary. Paris was one of the most disgusting cities on earth, and it still is even in modern day, which Paris, beautiful, beautiful city. No knock to Paris at all. Just saying, some of these practices, like they're so, crazy to us nowadays. But even just a few hundred years ago, this is how things were being done. And so the Moors had this huge, incredible impact on the world. Everyone's heard of algebra, right? But algebra, even the al on, that term, alchemist was the name for chemet, chemistry, alchemy, all of this stuff came from the Moors. Algebra, all of these things. So, you know, it just had a huge impact even on society today, and it helps to piece together the pieces or put together the puzzle pieces for why we have these anomalies here, right? There's artifacts and things over here in the Americas that make no sense, and just okay, that helped, right? And so, from a historical perspective, I love history. It made a lot of sense. It helped to understand the world, and then also
Mhm.
spiritual, right? When I got into the spiritual teachings of the Moorish Science Temple of America, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, all of this stuff started to make sense. Man, I've lived internationally, lived in Brazil for 5 years. Um, moved out to Brazil in like 2007, lived out there for a while, and could see these same connections there. You know, just living in Brazil as an American, right? Um, the people there, of course, look like us, just like us, right? Like you, like me, like the so-called African Americans. But you would see things there, like in Brazil, they would have like neighborhoods. Like there's a neighborhood that we actually lived in at one point in time that was called Jardim de Allah, which is Garden of Allah. You would see, they would have neighborhoods with names like Shalom, El Shaddai. You'll see people with like the six-pointed star of David, on the like the schools, and the people who were in these neighborhoods and stuff there, you like look like us. I'm not trying to make it just all about us, but I have to tell the truth, man. It's the truth, right? They even have a story in Brazil. Speaking about Brazil in particular, um, Brazil is very interesting. So the capital of Brazil, it's in the center of the country, right? And it's like, um, matter of fact, it's kind of like in the center of the country, in the middle of nowhere, and they call it Brasilia. And the people who settled that town, they were called Maroons, right? Maroons, and they're Afro Brazilians. They're called Maroons, and they practice Judaism. Even though you had Catholic conquest, and some of them had to hide that, to still practice what their ancestors were practicing. But like that's what they were. They were Moorish. They were Marons. They were Moors. They were Moorish people who try to keep some of their culture going. And more than likely, they were part of the Inquisition, because later, when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella took over Spain, they later on said, "Okay, we about to punish all these Moors, all of these Moors that's still living here in Al Andalus." They're like, "It's not gonna be Spain if we don't get them up out of here." So they say you convert or die, and they had this thing called the Reconquista, which lasted for many years, and it was pretty much torture for all the Moorish Jews and and Muslims in Spain. They had to convert or die. And then even after they converted to Christianity, they still were being tortured. They had people come in to check their house to make sure they, weren't still practicing their own religions and customs, and just crazy. And a lot of people fled Spain. Some went into Africa, and that's people who actually were shipped into the Americas for the slave trade, because they would be like strangers coming in to try to settle in different parts of Africa, and then some just went straight to America, right? So
Nice.
I hope
Yeah.
I ain't not saying too much, bro.
No,
But
you good. You good.
yeah,
I'm
sharing a
tracking
little
with
bit
you at
about that.
least because it fits into a lot of the studies. I love history too. Like that's one of my main areas: science, history, spirituality, and they overlap a lot. So just when you study a lot of history, you notice things that don't quite connect, as well
Yeah,
as people try to make things connect.
yeah,
You notice things missing. Um, like even as a kid, we were told Christopher Columbus discovered America. And then when he got here, there were people here. Well, if you can show up and other people are there, that means you didn't discover anything.
exactly.
That's me in second, third grade hearing about Christopher Columbus. I'm like, well, how you discover something with people already there? Um, Eventually we find out Christopher Columbus never made it here. He sent his son who did a lot of horrible stuff. So we found out that was a lie.
Yeah,
uh, but as I started to study all the different cultures that I've studied, what got me to understand that there was missing history is when I started to look into the anomaly that we call the Native Americans.
yeah,
That they, at the same time, didn't connect anywhere, but also had pieces of a whole bunch of places that aren't too close to each other.
Yeah.
So, for my own research, I said, oh, what we call Native Americans are hybrids over a period of time before it was called America that come from Africa, India, and China
Yeah.
that eventually mixed, mingled, and shared trades and different forms of spirituality with each other. The tribes are all either one of the three or hybrids of the three.
Yeah.
So, because that's something I even learned when we started talking about the slave trade, is how they would take dark skinned Native Americans and put them on the plantations with the people that they were shipping over overseas from overseas.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's why we kind of related to everybody and look like everybody. They took the darkest people from everywhere and threw us on the same plantation.
Oh yeah.
So it's a common critique that I hear from racist white people where they're like, oh, y'all, everybody, y'all was this and y'all was that. I'm like, well, we got that from y'all. Y'all took us from everywhere, put us on one plantation, bred us around. So yeah, we actually are authentically related to everybody. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we Egyptian and we're Moors and we're Olmecs and we're natives and we're this and we're that because that's who y'all put on the plantation.
Yep.
The part that I found out more recently was the Moorish colony. I had read about how the Moors ruled Spain for a period of time, but I didn't know what that had to do with America at all until I more recently found out that the Moors, like America, was a Moorish colony. That was one of their territories. I'm like, there it goes. This is why we don't learn the Moors.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
So,
that's like that probably sounds crazy to the average person, I'm sure. But there's so much that is hidden, like
mhm.
right in front of our faces that we wouldn't even know how to interpret it unless we can look back further and have a more well-rounded view of history. And just pardon one. All right. Can I share my screen? Is it all right if I?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, there are some images I would like to share while I'm speaking on this. Just with what you said with America being a Moorish colony, because I know that's gonna like sound like crazy talk,
Yeah. This
but
is
I
why I
want to.
call Moorish history kind of like the apocrypha of history.
Yeah.
It's not that it's wrong. It's the stuff that's omitted in on purpose. Actually,
Yeah, yeah,
it's omitted
definitely.
history.
I agree with you there. I think it's definitely done on purpose, and I think maybe after we just show some of the imagery along with what I have to say, it'll make sense as to why. You don't even have to explain to anybody why it's been hidden, right? Because it's self-explanatory. Um, yeah, man, I'm trying to get this image up, man. We saw some. My wife and I had gone to the Masonic Museum. I think it's the George Washington Masonic Museum, but it's in Arlington, Virginia, and it's on top of this huge mound, pyramid like mound, and it's like this big obelisk like type building. It's beautiful, like immaculate, right? And so it's on top of it. And then when you go in there, like you can look at all the paintings and all the artifacts and stuff they have, about the history of Freemasons in this country. But when we went to the top floor, I think my wife had pointed out to me. She's like, "Look at that!" It was like a painting of the inauguration of George Washington, and we saw something really interesting that I don't think the average person would see this stuff at all. You need somebody to go in there with you and point this stuff out. But man, I really need to get this image. Oh man, so I'll just explain it just in case I can't get it. But for the most part, I'm gonna say it had to do with like the flags. Like so, in this image, this painting we saw, you have this inauguration event that's taking place, and it's like celebrating the birth of the nation, I guess you could say. And then the painting, okay, I think I found it. So in the painting, you have the different colonists that are there. You have George Washington on like a boat, and he's coming up to like a stand that's set up to welcome him. And you have different witnesses there. You have like an indigenous family, some so-called Indians that are there watching. You have all these different flags up from different nations, meaning they're represented. They're witnessing this act that's taking place, and George Washington is being welcomed into something, right? It's very interesting because,
Mhm.
and this is why I need the image up here so you can see the flags that are flying, and I can explain them little bit better. But you have two flags that are flying, right? One was the early colonial U.S. flag, and then the other one is a flag that they call like the if you look it up like on Wikipedia, I think they call it like the continental flag or early continental flag, but it's basically it was a flag that they say they'll tell you was adopted by New England colonists. It's a red flag, all red flag that's got a white box in the corner, and then that white box has a pine tree, a green pine tree on it, right? And I am hoping I can pull that up for you.
Mhm.
I want to say that. I need to give you a little bit of history on that flag. Without the history, it doesn't really make sense. So it's got it says I believe it says inauguration. It either says and it says welcome. Maybe it says welcome. I'm hoping I can pull this painting up. But it's welcoming George Washington into this new nation. And the nation has that flag, the red flag with the pine cone, I mean the pine tree in the white box, and it has the early colonial flag with the stars and stripes, or a version of that, right? And it's welcoming George Washington into a nation, into that nation. And so there's also a protocol to the way that we fly flags, and in international protocol, when we fly flags, you show the home flag for the home nation on from the perspective of the people that's looking at it, it would be on the left, but from the presenter, it's on the presenter's right. And then the visiting nation, or the nation that's not like in power, because you're over in a foreign country, would be on the left. Or if you're looking at it, it would be on your right. Okay. And so the flags that I'm speaking of, the way they were positioned, this red flag with the white box that has a pine tree, was in the superior position. It was in the position of the home nation, or the home country, right? And then the colonial flag was in the position of the um I guess you could say the visiting country. All right. And so it's implying, which man, I couldn't find it. I'm still looking for it. It would be better if I could add this image up while I say this. But it's implying that he's being welcomed into the nation of whoever that red flag with the pine tree is. Okay. And so I'm gonna give some insight into that. Man, I'm still looking. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna pull that up so that we can share that, because it makes way more sense if you can see what I'm talking about. I just was looking at this the other day. I thought I'd just be able to pull it up like that.
You want me to pause it so you can find it?
That would be great. Yeah. Okay. And I just want to say gratitude for bringing that flag up here. While I try to describe this, attempt to describe this, I'm still looking for the image to share with you, just to give a better depiction, a better, to show what I'm trying to describe. But yeah, in the Masonic Museum, we see this incredible painting. It's showing George Washington being inducted into the new nation, and the flag that's flying in the superior position is this flag that you have up here. And then on the other side, which would be like you're viewing the pictures on the right side, would be the early American colonial flag. And so this is depicting that George Washington's actually being inducted into this nation, meaning this whatever nation it was that this flag represented. And when you look that up on online, I mean, it'll tell you that's the New England flag. That's the early colonial flag of New England. But even in that, they still let you know that the history of the pine tree as a symbol of New England predates European colonial settlements. It'll even tell you that, like even on like Wikipedia, they let you know that that flag, that white flag with the pine tree, actually came from the Algonquin or the Lenape people. All right, and that's actually the flag of Lebanon, the white flag with that pine tree. And with the Lebanon, from the Lebanese perspective, they're connecting themselves back into the ancient Phoenician people, the ancient Phoenician Canaanite people who were settled in the Levant, in Lebanon, many thousands of years ago. Right, those people traveled throughout the world too, especially the Phoenicians. They settled in North Africa. They settled in the Iberian Peninsula, and guess what? They also settled in America, and that's why there's, not a tribe. The Algonquins or the Lenape will be the people think those are tribes. Those were nations. So you're talking about nations that were made up of several tribes of indigenous Americans, and they were flying a variation of that same flag because they're connecting themselves to their descent as Phoenician Canaanite people who settled in the Americas many, many, many years ago. And unfortunately, I could not find the painting, and I don't want to give up, but I think I need to just give up and move on because, hey, it wasn't meant to be, right? If I would have just found it right away, okay, nope. I thought I could just type painting and maybe pull it up real quick, pop it out, but no. So yeah, let's just say it wasn't meant to be. But wish I could have shown the image, but hey, wasn't meant to be. Let's keep it moving. Just just there's a lot of things, a lot of anomalies and things that don't make sense unless you have a more well-rounded view of history. There is something that I could share on the screen if you wouldn't mind. It
Yeah.
may make some sense to the audience. It's a image. Got it on here right now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, this image is from the oldest Freemasonic lodge in the world. Well, as far as we know, and this is the Grand Lodge of England, right? And when you look up at the tapestry and the ceiling, you'll see what appears to be, I guess you could say, the all-seeing eye or the eye of providence, with some columns and looks like some rays of light coming down, right? Some of them are slanted, some of them coming straight down. And then you've got this five-pointed star with the red background. And they'll probably tell you that's all it is. But this also looks a lot like the Moroccan flag, just to me. That looks like the Moroccan flag. Just saying. And these are the type of symbols and things that occur that like don't really make any sense if you're not
Yeah.
able to look at history from a different perspective. You see that, hey, maybe there's another reason why there's a pyramid on the dollar bill, with the floating eye of providence or all-seeing eye, at the top. Maybe there's a reason for that, and maybe it's not what we've always thought that it was. You know, maybe it has something to do with this nation actually having some kind of connections to something more ancient, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm just saying that because yeah, that's been my experience in studying history. There's way more to this paradigm that we're in meets the eye, and that's where I'm at, like with the Moorish perspective.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because a lot of people have never heard of him.
Yeah, yeah. So with this person, It's on the cover of that book, The Prophet Noble Drew Ali. He was a man who was born in 1886 in North Carolina. And at, uh, during the early 1900s, he began to teach his people that they're not Negroes, which is what his people were being called at that point in time. Right? That's what our people here in America were classified as. We were classified as Negroes. They were trying. There was a push to get us to take on the term colored, but it wasn't as popular as Negro. So we were being called Negroes. We were even calling ourselves Negroes. And of course, in the 1900s, where our people were dealing with this, with Jim Crow laws, right? So it was harsh for the people. They're also dealing with lynchings and things like that. So it's very harsh, difficult for the people, difficult even just to have their own communities and be successful, because in some cases their communities were being attacked, and if they were too successful having their own businesses and stuff like that, they were being lynched, they're being burned down, attacked, murdered. For the most part, threatened or intimidated. Like, don't you dare even try to be successful again. And then also in cases like in Wilmington, North Carolina, when the people were politically active and they had control of like entire cities, politically, as far as the mayors, the city council, and all of that stuff, you actually had armed people coming from across state lines to come and lynch and tear those cities and towns down and keep those people in their place, those Negroes. And so the Prophet Noble Drew Ali came to people who were going through this at that point in time in the early 1900s to say, hey, um, we're not Negroes. That was a label that was created to box us in, basically to box us into the bottom of the caste system here in America. How many of us even know there's a caste system here, right? So this is, it's a caste system, and this Negro thing box is created to keep you at the bottom of it. And at that point in time, he was telling us we're not Negro, black, or colored, even though our people weren't going by black back then. That's something that we would take on like 60 years later, right? Like in the 70s,
Yeah.
80s, yeah. 60s, people didn't really like it.
Yeah.
50s, nah, they were not. And in the 40s, if you were calling people black, those might have been fighting words, right? They're like, nah, I'm colored, I'm Negro.
Yeah.
But the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was letting us know that these are all terms that delude to slavery, and they're created to separate us from who we truly are. And so, in part of that teaching is not just of rejecting these labels, but it's also of coming into your own culture. Like, hey, look, we've been programmed. We need to unprogram. We need to return to the ways of our ancestors, of our forefathers and foremothers, to come into our covenant with the Creator, right? We have to do this to ensure our earthly and divine salvation. So this was a large scale movement that he, wants to, bring to our people, but also to the greater, humanity, all of our human brothers and sisters, because ultimately we're here to uplift fallen humanity. Just doing my own research and understanding on that, like that perspective of what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, more than likely what he actually meant by that is, look, um, when you look at, we're just gonna say black people nowadays, um, we are no longer seen as the moral compass for this country, right? You go back to 1930, 1940, we were seen as the moral compass for the country, even in the lower state, even with Jim Crow and all that terrible stuff going on. But
Mm-hmm.
we've fallen. We've gotten so far away from that now that we celebrate actually the carnal mind. We literally celebrate it, right? Um, we have these teachings like in our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where it really goes into the higher and lower self, where it's speaking about the lower self, the carnal mind. And it says what is the lower self, or what does the lower self breed? And the lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. And I always joke around like in our meetings for our temple that like hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. Man, if you made a rap album like that, you know, people would be like hyped. They're like, man, he's gonna be going in on that album, right? Hatred, slander, murder, lewdness, theft, because that's what the music is. Is definitely lewdness. At the very least, it's gonna be extremely lewd. The type of thing you don't want a little innocent child hearing this. You don't want
Mm.
them hearing what the baby or any of these people's talking about because it's gonna be so lewd that it's like you don't want your grandma hearing it either. It's like you can't really play that stuff out loud, even though people do. But when you do, it's what? It's offensive because it's extremely lewd. So at the very least, right? Hatred for each other. Growing up in Memphis, it's like we have to have some edge where we're untrustworthy and we're despicable like people. Like I'm way grimier than you, and it's like that was the mentality, and it still is. I know it still is. Even now, it's even worse now, right? So murder, and we know the music, and the movies and the shows and all everything that's tied into that type of entertainment, that form of entertainment, where our people are the ones depicted, showing this black on black crime. That's murder, right? We're killing each other. We're selling drugs. We're doing drugs. We're very lewd. We're very vulgar and lewd and just like, and so that gets promoted to the world. So we consume it and we take it in because we see this as our culture. So we think this is who we're supposed to be. Our own youth get lost in it, but then everybody else does too, right? Like here in this country, many people of European descent, they also get into it hardcore. They love it, and that brings them down, right? Future helped to usher in the fentanyl crisis, rapping about pills and making it seem cool to do pills. Like when I was growing up, we thought it was cool to sell drugs, which is messed up. And now people think it's cool to do the drugs, to take the pills.
Mhm.
To be, we would never have thought it was cool to be a crackhead, but nowadays they think it's cool. And so we take it. But here's the thing: it's not just us in this country because this music and the movies, the films, the TV shows, it's probably the biggest export that America has. And who's the face of all of that stuff? It's us. It's the show power. You have a black family that's successful, but they're selling drugs and they hate each other and they're killing people with their bare hands, shooting people. They're selling drugs. It's just despicable. Just can't no one can trust each other, and then the music is on that level, and that's the vibration, that's the frequency, and that's also
Mhm.
what's put out in the airwaves because it's in the Wi-Fi, it's in the radio waves, the satellite, right? It's the signal that gets put
Mhm.
out. So it's actually in the air. So when you have an entire community and most of the people in the community like this music, we watch these shows. A lot of people watching the Tubi shows. If you're watching the Tubi movies, a lot of the Tubi movies is just hatred, slander, murder, theft, lewdness, and everything that brings harm. It's all lower self. And so this is the signal. So even if you're not watching this stuff, if you live in the community, it's just in the air, man. You're not even seeing it. But that's the mentality. And then this gets promoted to the world. So even people who don't speak our language, they're seeing this stuff. And it's having an impact. You can kind of see it even if you don't go to Senegal, you don't go to Nigeria, you're not in Benin and all these places, but you see the music that they're putting out now, the Afro beats, and they're taking on our negative imagery and way of life and stuff like that. They're taking that on. They're thinking that it's cool to just knock women up. We don't need to get married, man, because we not even trying to get married. You know, just like in general, the general. Not saying that's how you or I think. Just saying this is the
Yeah.
general stigma that we have, and we know it's not just some fake entertainment thing. People really think like this.
Yeah.
Like a lot of our people, we not even trying to get married. You might have like 3 children with a woman, been with her for 8, 9 years, Why aren't you guys married?
Yeah. And I've
You
seen
should
that.
be
I've
working,
traced
solidify
Yeah,
it.
I've traced that just through generation by generation. You notice that pretty much the generation that comes next will either amplify what was done to them or try to do the opposite of what they experienced.
Yeah.
And I've watched that generation after generation. You know, you go back to our grandparents, maybe great grandparents. The man was king of the house, whatever he said went, because he was the only one who could make money and he was the king of his castle. So dad was never wrong. So they was watching the breadwinner beat their mama, beat them. He had another family off on the side, but
Yeah.
they was
Yeah.
married. Well, the kids grew up said, "We not living like that."
Yeah. So when in, like you said, went in the
And
complete
then
opposite
generation
direction.
after
Yeah.
generation, at first, then it's, you have some they getting beat on by boyfriends just because that was normal in their house, not even married, they getting beat on. So then you get to the next generation, they say, you know what, we in situationships, we don't want to commit. I watched my mama get beat up by her boyfriend, not husband, boyfriend.
Yeah.
Her
Yeah.
grandparents was getting beat up by husbands. So new
Yeah.
generations say we kind of cool on this commitment stuff. That didn't work out for our ancestors, for the generations before us. And it takes small stuff like that because we can't really control what parts of life people that come after us that are watching us pick up on,
Oh yeah, that's
right?
true.
They
That's true.
talk
I mean,
about
even
how one kid can have you can have a father who's an alcoholic and you have two sons raised by the same parent. One grows up to be an alcoholic just like his daddy, and the other grow up to never touch alcohol, and they'll both say, I got it from my daddy.
yep, that's true. That's true. Very true, man. Yeah, definitely. And that's what we're living in, and with all the negativity, negative imagery and stuff that I was speaking on, I was just
Yeah,
trying to really make the point that I think ultimately we had to fall, speaking about so-called black people, black Americans, we had to fall and it had to be depicted for the whole world to see so that when we rise we can have that impact. We can help to impact not just ourselves, but also others to change in a positive way. So that,
yeah,
like, if I'm coming, like, oh, not holy and everything, but if I'm coming, and I'm being sincere and helpful and kind and wanting to do right and to help others and assist others, and people are seeing it like, hey, they've been through this, it carries more weight than
yeah,
someone who's like, fake holy. They ain't been through nothing. You ain't experienced nothing. It's like, look, we've been through it. You saw us. You saw the World Star videos and all that mess. All this foolishness we've been doing. It's like, look, we not innocent. You know, and
yeah,
we did what we did, and as we turn it around and rise, it'll have that greater of an impact on
yeah,
ourselves first, and then on others in this country and even worldwide.
yeah,
So I do believe we will eventually turn things around, as far as that people.
yeah.
Just
So
coming from the Moorish perspective, that's what I believe the Prophet Noble Ali came to inspire in us to actually move up higher. And ultimately, the message that he came, in addition to this, we're not black, we're Moors, is deeper than that. It's like ultimately, we're neither the body nor the soul, we are spirit and one with our creator. I would say our Father God Allah. you know so ultimately it's all spiritual message because it's really about cleaning yourself up and beginning to unify your own thoughts with your higher self to really open up your connection to the creator for real, and to be able to think, act, and live from that higher self, and ultimately have a greater impact on the world, right?
yeah,
Because we're supposed to be Jesus. We're not supposed to be, it's the same as you got in your book, brother. I got your book. We're not supposed to be followers forever. That's the same perspective, right? With the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he was coming to get us to be like this, to do this, be your higher self. Don't put me up here on some pedestal,
yeah,
right? Don't put me on the cross, no knock to that, but just saying, don't, no, you do the work.
yeah.
You
And he
are
was
Christ.
Noble Drew Ali was a healer in his own right, correct?
Yeah, that is one of the things that he did for people, just like with um maybe with just with touch and stuff like that, but also with herbs and natural ointments and teas and things like that. And I think you had a lot of that type of stuff going on maybe in the 1920s, with people like us, ethnic people, you could do that, and people would, take to it. So yeah, that's one of the things that he was doing,
Yeah.
to help spread the message.
Yeah. One last question I have about the Moorish culture as a whole. I believe y'all trace part of y'all spiritual lineage back to the Canaanites. Is that, or this is kind of a loaded question, but is that the connection behind why y'all use El and Bay in your names?
Yeah,
If so,
definitely.
like what, and just to kind of ask the same question a different way, what does the El and Bay stand for in your names?
Okay, so just the simplest answer to that question, as far as like what the L and Bay stand for, the L's would stand for the lawgivers, and the Bays would stand for like the law enforcers or the governors. And we're returning. We're just annexing the El or Bay to our name, so that we're not changing our lineage or hiding, moving away from our family, who we are. We're just adding that back to it to return to the ways of our ancestors. And like you said, a Canaanite ancestry, Phoenician Canaanite ancestry. With that being something that we would have legit linked to genetically, but then also spiritually. Like, because Canaan also has a spiritual symbolism, you could say, is the land of milk and honey. And with that land of milk and honey actually being our own pineal gland, right? I have a breakdown on that too. I could go more in depth on that if you like. But going back to the Canaanites, the L's and the Bays. Okay, so in the land of Canaan, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about
Hmm.
Canaanite society. Like, you can't, and this isn't knocking anyone. It's going to
Yeah.
sound like a knock though, but you can't, as an outsider of an ancient culture that's thousands of years old, come in and, oh, I see what this is. Oh, they worship the El, they worship the the Baal, right? It would, um, so most of the research and stuff that we're seeing about the ancient Canaanites would be coming from a European perspective, and they don't even know what they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So El was one of the names for the creator,
Yeah. The Father, the
El, the
Supreme.
Father, right? And the Hebrew culture, or Hebrew culture, actually came out of Canaanite culture. This is why they took a lot of the words and terms for the creator
Yeah.
from the Canaanite people, right?
Yeah. They took
But
y'all away
we're
from the Canaanites.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah. So L and Bay, in the modern sense, Bey. That's coming from L and Baal. You'll see Ba, maybe apostrophe Al. Baal is like the son of El, but Baal is actually pronounced by the Canaanite or Phoenician people as Baal, Baal, and so that's El and Bay. And the people back then did actually take on those names, like, to, for their last names or surnames or whatever you would call it. This is why you'll see, like, throughout history, different people like Hannibal. Hannibal was actually a Phoenician ruler, or general, and he he helped, like, during the Punic Wars. He helped the Phoenicians keep, um, take on land and stuff against the Romans. But he was Hannibal. He took on that term, like that. That was, like, a surname. This was some practice that was ancient, that had been going on for literally for thousands of years. And so this is something that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali came to return to us. And I believe one of the reasons why he did that is because we actually have legitimate claim to the land here in the Americas through our Phoenician Canaanite heritage, whether we realize it or not. Um, I've got some books behind me that speak about that. There's several artifacts found here in the Americas, um, that actually have the Phoenician and Canaanite language, and even in New England, they have a structure that they call the Temple of Baal. It was found in New Hampshire, in New England, right here, and it's got, like, inscriptions that are written either in the Phoenician. language or the Canaanite language, which Canaanite is older than Phoenician, so it's basically like the parent language. But I'm trying to pull some of this stuff up while I'm talking, if I can. Um, but these things are found throughout the Americas. There's a marker stone that was found in Connecticut, and I'm gonna pull that up in a minute too, if I can. Uh, and it's actually it says, "By this I take claim," and it's signed Hanno, and it's written in the Canaanite language. And this was a an old artifact. That's who knows how old it was, right? But the fact that it was found here and it's like hidden, like, I mean, there's some people, I think, like a European couple that have it, like they maybe turn their house into um, a makeshift museum, to show that artifact off. Is like a little sideshow type thing. If you know about it, hey, stop here when you're in Cape Cod and go check it out. But people don't know about this stuff, and this stuff definitely isn't talked about in history. And we would look at it. The typical black person would look at this stuff and would have no idea what this is about, or if this has, that this may have some connection to them and their ancestry in this land. And things like this have been found from North America, Central America, Caribbeans, all the way down to Brazil and Argentina. They found even coins in the Phoenician script, and they found artifacts in the Phoenician and Canaanite script that when they were being found, maybe like the 16, 1700s, 1800s, they hadn't even fully translated the script. So later on, they're able to see that this is accurate. So it wasn't a fake. Even if they, try to say it was fake, it's like it can't be fake. How does it be fake if people didn't even know how to write the script, because these are dead languages.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't just walking around knowing how to use it. So yeah, we've got this stuff that shouldn't be here, but it's found all throughout the Americas. It's not just found in New Hampshire. This is the American Temple of Baal. Baal. Remember, I said that Baal is Baal, 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 right? And there's a tablet there. I can't zoom in on that, but you actually have a stone structure that's built. And this is from the book by Barry Fell, Dr. Barry Fell. He was a Harvard professor. He wrote the book America BC. He basically goes, and exposes all these different anomalies found here that shouldn't be here, that make no sense given the mainstream version of history. And so there's a ton of this stuff out here, right? It's occurring that shouldn't be here. Um, but yeah, none of this makes any sense unless we know who we are. Once we know who we are, we figured out the missing cornerstone, or the this is what was missing, right? And so it's just another thing. But yeah, that with the Bay and the L on our names, and with the Moorish Science Temple of America, that's if you ask me, I say that's really what it goes back to. We're connecting ourselves back to our ancestors,
Yeah.
back to the land.
So,
Yeah.
just in terms of spirituality, you yourself being a spiritual leader in your own right, what does spirituality look like for you on a regular basis?
Um, so yeah, and it's just from a earthly perspective, um, spirituality is connecting to the unseen realm, connecting to the real, the truth, the real reality, the unseen, and it's so easy to overlook because in this physical matter dense reality, you more than likely you're born here and you have no guidance, nobody to tell you, hey, when you have these deja vu feelings, that's because you're actually, creating in the fourth dimension, and or, explain. Nobody's giving us these classes and stuff to help us to develop our extrasensory capabilities and know why this is really happening, right? So most of us, probably all of us, aren't getting this guidance, right? And so, for me, spirituality is tapping back into that true nature, that unseen nature, that is the real reality. Where we're all here experiencing this life, experiencing this physical creation, but we're also connected to the Creator. So if you're playing a video game and you're thinking that you're that video game character, whether it's Grand Theft Auto or whatever, you're getting so much into that story, you don't realize there's way more to the picture. You know, maybe you're not just a person playing the game, but you're actually connected to the creator. So getting back to that source, that's, to me, that's spirituality. The main thing, connecting back to the source.
Nice. So, what are some of the practices you do regularly? Are you someone that meditates a lot? Is it prayer for you? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, prayer and meditation is a daily practice. At least 3 to 5 times a day. Not long, super drawn out periods, but 15 minutes. I created many years ago. I created a meditation MP3. Actually, have it for uh, download on PayHip. I can share the link for people, but it's just a binary audio that you can play in your ears. And it's only 22 minutes long, and it helps to take you through the different brainwave states, so that you can go from theta, beta, up to a meditative mind state, where which would normally occur when you're asleep, when you get into
Mhm.
deep sleep. So you can get into that mind state while you're awake, and while you're doing this, ideally, you just take away your attention from distractions. Just close your eyes and maybe just focus on your breath. Slowing your breath down. That's also another way to alter your mind state. I believe that's called qigong. Which is practicing slowing the breath down. 10 seconds in, 10 seconds out. You know, 15 in, 15 out. And then hey, if you can get to 30 in, 30 out, you're doing great, because you're only taking one breath a minute, and you're not thinking about what did I just do. My back itches, and all. You're not even feeling that stuff anymore. You don't even have to move, and you're beginning to get this empty mind, and making that an everyday practice, right? So that now we're used to giving ourselves some little intervals to disconnect, but not disconnect actually, to actually connect to the all, to the everything. And so, yeah, for me, that's an everyday practice, and this is what we personally teach here in the temple for all of us to do. It's not just something like, oh, we're Muslim, we
Nice.
got to pray and do this. No, li- pray and meditate, and this is why we do it. You know, so
That's
that's
nice.
our thing.
So, brother, it was nice having you on. You dropped a lot of knowledge, giving people a good reason to research, to do some more studying, and even a little bit of encouragement for people who need a little bit of help of meditating. Like the idea that you do have music that helps people in that to get into the right brainwave patterns. So,
Yeah.
as we close out, what are some ways that people can connect with you, find your resources, find your books? Where can they do that at?
Okay. So first, if anybody is interested in the teachings, or even just want to sit in on a session, like we have Zooms for our temple meetings, and you can get that information on our temple website. That's MoorishAmericans.com. Moorish, MoorishAmericans.com. That is our local temple website. You can contact us on there, or you can just go through the website and find the information for our Zoom classes. And it's open to anyone that wants to study with us. It's like, no discrimination or anything. All ethnicities. Everyone's open to study with us, learn with us. We answer questions, right? We don't pretend to know everything, but yeah, you can, on the spiritual tip, you can reach out to us there. Also, I have a website called moresinamerica.com. It's filled with information. You can go there. You can click the link on there to go to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. We're on Facebook as well. On there, you can also reach out. You can get the book on there. I do have a book. that I just released, well, earlier this year. It's called Unlocking the Keys, a metaphysical guide to the Quran questionnaire for Moorish Americans. Remember though, that is actually for uplifting fallen humanity. So it's not like it's limited to anyone, right? That's open to everyone. Everyone has a connection to the creator. If you ask me, I just wanted to share that real quick so you can see the cover of the book. And maybe if you want to see some of the imagery that's in there. But yeah, it's a big book, 400 pages. It goes through the entire 101 keys from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and breaks down what they're really talking about from a metaphysical perspective, and just giving us some real keys that we can use to for real improve our own lives, like real practical tips that we can use to strengthen our connection to our own higher self. We all have a higher and lower self, and this is a reality. And it's hard to believe, but it's a very much a reality. We've seen this type of imagery in the cartoons growing up, where they show the angel and the demon on the shoulders for the characters, maybe angel and the devil. But there's truth in that because we all have a carnal mind, carnal nature, and we all have spirit in us, which is one with the creator. Spirit is connected to everything in reality. And so we all have this truth that is in us, that is within us. So this is to help you tap into that truth within and to realize your own power. And you can get that too from moresinamerica.com. And also, if you like this turban wrap that I'm wearing on my head, man, you can get that from me too. We have those, all the colors of the rainbow. So definitely reach out and get everything, moresinamerica.com. Gratitude to you for letting me speak and allowing me to share all of this stuff. And just, yeah, man, it's been a blessing. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you for joining and being a part of this. There's a lot that people can learn from you, and I hope a lot of people take you up on that offer to sit in and learn and study with you, because I respect people that do research. And you're a
Hey,
person that has read just as many books as I have. So I respect that a lot.
gratitude and much respect to you, and gratitude to you for writing this book and giving people real practical ways to connect to the creator, to tap in, to go within. And yeah, I think everybody should get your book. Powerful.
Thank you for that.
Doing great work out here. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, y'all, that concludes this episode of The Inner. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.